A desert planet with twin suns.
Why do I sense we've picked up another pathetic life form?
Use my knowledge. Much to learn, you still have.
Welcome back to Twin Sun Talks, folks. I'm your host, Jonah Liu. Thank you so much for listening. And welcome to another character profile. Today we're going to be covering Cassian Andor in honor of his show coming out in just a little over a month. I gotta say, there's not too much information readily available about Andor, which makes it very exciting that we're getting a show about him. But that being said, let's dive into ARC Trooper training.
Gentlemen, who wants to be an ARC Trooper? I do, sir!
So like I've already said, today we're going to be talking about Cassian Andor, and now he's a very interesting character, although he's only appeared in one form of visual media in the Star Wars canon timeline, and that would be the movie Rogue One. But like I said, he's very, very interesting. He is a human male from the planet of Fest, and he has a couple different affiliations, but the most significant ones are the Confederacy of Independent Systems, as well as the Rebel Alliance, specifically the Intelligence Division. So, as far as a timeline, there's not too much that we know about him, but we do know that before Rogue One, he joined a Confederacy of Independent Systems, or the Separatist Alliance, a Separatist-backed group during the Clone Wars in the Outer Rim, and his father was killed during a protest against the expansion of rebel militarism. And his mother was also died at a young age for him, and so. But both of them were stringently opposed to the Republic. They were both separatists at heart. And he grew up disliking clones, disliking the Republic in general, and would throw stones at Republic tanks and clone troopers as a child, which I think is rather interesting. And then he spent time with an anti-imperial anarchist group before joining the rebellion later in life. This would be as a young adult rather than a child. And then he was recruited by General Draven, who we see prominently featured both in Rogue One, but also in Empire Strikes Back. Cassian, served as a captain of the Rebel Intelligence Branch. So obviously those are operatives that are gathering information for the rebellion and stuff like that. And he was very good at what he did. Some things of note: on a mission to Wekako, he wiped the memory of an Imperial security droid and took it back with him. And obviously this droid becomes the beloved K2SO, who we also meet in the movie Rogue One. I just think that that's a little interesting. He was infiltrating a base, and they knew that there weren't going to be many stormtroopers, but turns out there were a lot of Imperial security droids, which made their job pretty difficult. And they ended up taking one back with them, which proved to be very useful in the long run. On a mission to the Fitzner system, he also rescued Wookiee prisoners, and he actually sent K2SO with them to sort of a remote world to stay until he finished his mission, which was some sort of raid on an Imperial base. This was in a comic. I'm not super familiar. I just read up on it. But that being said, going into Rogue One itself, and if you watch the movie, then this will just be a sort of recap of those events. But Cassian met and assassinated Tivik on the Ring of Kafrene after learning of a planet-killing superweapon that the Empire was developing. Now, Tivik was a rebel informant of Saw Gerrera's sect, and he's the guy that had the broken arm, and so that's why he couldn't climb the wall that Cassian was trying to get him to avoid the stormtrooper patrols, and Cassian made the call to kill him rather than let him be captured by the Empire. So, that being said, he goes back to Yavin 4 and takes a mission to extract a pilot with information about the super weapon that he learned of, which is obviously the Death Star. And he's joined by Jyn Erso, the son of Galen Erso, who helped design the Death Star. And also there's K2SO on the mission as well. And they travel to the planet of Jeddah, and they are captured by Saw Gerrera and his rebels, and they receive a message about the Death Star from Galen, and learning about its weakness before they escape Saw Gerrera's stronghold, and they travel to Edu to assassinate Galen Erso, or at least Cassian's motive is to assassinate Galen. Jin doesn't know this, but he decides to make that call on his own. But the entire thing goes awry after a surprise attack by Rebel starfighters, which ended in Galen's death anyways. But Cassian had Galen in his crosshairs, but decided not to shoot him. And it was a whole mess where the Rebel Alliance was informed of the location of the base and called in an airstrike, and they destroyed virtually everything before Galen could be recruited to their cause, which he likely would have defected. But after the events on Edu, Cassian led a rogue mission to Scarif in order to obtain schematics of the Death Star, and obviously this mission was Rogue One. And at this point, he's accompanied by a lot of different people. So obviously, he has some rebels that are sort of nameless, but he also has Jyn Erso. He has K2SO. He has Bodhi Rook, the defective Imperial pilot. He also has Chirrut and Baze Malbus from the planet Jeddah, and many, many more. Like I said, they're a little more nameless, but there's a very solid team. They take a commandeered Imperial ship to the planet of Scarif. Now once they're on the planet, they infiltrate the Imperial compound with Jyn and K2SO. And unfortunately, K2SO dies, quote unquote. He's a droid. But he buys them time for Andor and Jyn to get the plans and then transmit them. Now, Cassian is injured, but manages to save Jyn from an altercation with Director Krennic, which allows her to transmit the Death Star plans to the Rebel fleet. Now, this all happens at the very climactic moment where we think Cassian is done for, but then he shows back up last minute. And both of them died smooching away on the beaches of Scarif, as one does, when you got the chance to smooch with Felicity Jones. But that's how he dies. Now, obviously, there was a large gap in time between when he was a child versus when he joined the rebellion, and that's where this show Andor is going to fill in the gaps. And it's very interesting because as I've understand it, and I'll go into this more closer to the show, I'm going to do a whole breakdown of what to know before watching Andor, but as far as I know, this is going to take place in a very short amount of time, this first season, but it's already been greenlit for a season 2. And as far as I know, season 2 is going to cover many, many years, whereas the first season's not going to cover that much time at all. But season 2 is going to cover like a year per 3 episodes, which is pretty compelling. So we'll see how it goes. And it's not necessarily going to be sequential years. It's just 3 episodes are going to encapsulate a year, and then we might have a 2-year time jump to the next year-long sequence of 3 episodes, if that makes sense. But it should be really interesting, and I think that I have a lot... it's a lot more manageable expectations for the show because it's not a character that has too much impact on the larger canon timeline. We know how his story ends, and at this point, it's just going to be really interesting to get to learn more about him. You're not really rocking the boat at all like you would with a Boba Fett or a Kenobi when there's a lot of existing lore that could be affected by anything that happens in the show. So that's rather exciting, and I think that he's a really interesting character. I love Diego Luna, who plays him, and it should be a really interesting time. I'll update y'all, like I said, once I learn more about the show, but it seems to be really interesting. It seems like we're going to be following a story about Mon Mothma and the Imperial Senate, and we're going to see some live-action clone troopers. It's going to be a good time. But that being said, I'm just going to read some various facts about Andor. I don't know. There's not too much about him, like I said, but he went by various aliases in his time as an operative, including Willix, Ock, Jorith Sward, and Fulcrum. And an interesting thing about Fulcrum is that it's the same alias that Saw Gerrera, Ahsoka Tano, and Alexander Callis all use as sort of an informant for the Rebel Alliance generalized. Affiliates of Cassian's include K2SO, the reprogrammed Imperial security droid, Jyn Erso, Mon Mothma, General Draven, Bodhi Rook, the defective pilot, Baze Malbus, and then Chirrut Emwe, who's the ex-Guardian of the Wills. Now, another fact is that the starfighter group started by Luke Skywalker called Rogue Squadron was actually named after Andor's team, Rogue One. So that's kind of interesting. And also, just as an individual, Cassian specialized in reconnaissance, assassination, and sabotage. So he's a really interesting character. I think that the show's going to be really good. I think it has potential to be Mando level good. So here's hoping. It's a really interesting time period of that sort of Imperial era, which we don't know too much about. So it's exciting. I can't wait to learn more, and y'all will definitely be hearing from me when I do. So with that in mind, that's all that I have. But this wouldn't be a proper episode if I didn't leave you with just a little bit more. So this is going to be a shorter more, but it's just that Cassian's middle name is Jeron, spelled Jeron, and that is it. But that being said, make sure that you follow us on Instagram. Been posting a lot of content on there recently, so make sure to go check that out. We are at Twin Sun Talks, and then subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can find pretty much the same content in the form of shorts, which is Twin Sun Talks Podcast. And if you don't already, make sure to follow and listen wherever you get your podcast on any streaming services. Just search up Twin Sun Talks. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you do your podcasting. But that's about it. We got a lot of Star Wars content coming in the future, so make sure you stay tuned for that. I'm really excited to cover it with y'all. And yeah, that's about it. You've taken your first steps into a larger world. May the Force be with you, and I will see y'all in the next episode. Bye, friends.